Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mayor Media Podcast. I'm your host today, Mukunda Raghavan, and we are joined by Rāma Śēṣan today, who is an author. His first book, I believe, it's called From the Gods to the God, kind of showing the journey of Judaism and Christianity from a multi or a polytheism of sorts into a more, I would say, aggressive, monotheistic, exclusivist worldview, and how that impacted the ancient world and I guess partially our modern world. So Rāma is a PhD in, I believe, mathematics. Is that not correct, Rāma?
Yeah,
So pleasure to have you, Rāma. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
You?
Good. This is one of your first interviews, right? That you've done in the media space.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw you did one with I believe she also wrote a forward to you, correct? Or a review of your book.
Yeah, that is just a video review, not exactly an interview like this.
Okay. Good. Well, I'm glad to be one of the first people that you interviewed. I've done that for a few other people, which is really fun and really nice. And hopefully it gets you going more into talking in public and stuff. So I first found out about you, I think, on Twitter. At the time, you went under a pseudonym of Satyam Bruate, right?
Broyat.
Bruyat, yeah, Satyam Bruyat. What can you now tell us a bit about your background and then why you started Twitter with anonymity and then decided to come out?
I mean, it is just that I did not want to get random stalkings. I didn't want to get stalked randomly by people. So
yeah,
that is why I started with an anonymous name. But I didn't know that I would people would like it so much and I would write a book. So eventually I decided I think the audience should know the person behind the account to give a more authentic voice
right.
to me.
So how is that? So what's your background? Like, how where you from, and then like what was your childhood like? What made you decide to get into studying this stuff?
Okay, so I would say my family is not that traditional.
Mm-hmm.
So the only connection that I have with Hinduism is through stories told by my mother. So that kind of intrigued me a lot.
Yeah.
So I asked for more and more stories, and I grew up listening and cherishing them. And eventually, when I was a teenager, I came to stumble upon this Rick Riordan's novels, like Percy Jackson or
Right.
Kane Chronicles. I don't know if you know him.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Richard Royden, right?
Rick Riordan.
Yeah. Rick Riordan. It was good. I like the stuff.
Yeah. So when I opened that, I was fascinated. The first intuition I got, it was, hey, this feels familiar to me. These heroes, these gods. I would map Greek gods to Indian gods. Whenever possible, or
Right.
even to Egyptian gods. I used to say, Horus is just our Garuda. So I would like to experiment like that.
Yeah.
So, and then it took me a while when I realized that, these were not merely stories. These were serious stuff. People actually worship these gods, even though nobody worships them now. We still worship our gods, but it was the same for them also. But I pondered, why did they stop worshiping these gods? What went wrong? And then I realized, they were all Christian or Muslim now. So I started researching on what do Christians worship, what do Muslims worship.
Right.
And then I realized, okay, the first thing I got it was, okay, why does everybody need to worship only one God, that too from Israel or Arabia? So in fact, one of my neighbors is a Christian. She used to tell Bible stories to her kids. So I in the veranda, and I used to overhear. I once overheard the kid asked once, "Amma, God always talks about Israel, Israel, Israel only. Where are my people? Why
Oh,
should
that's
I
a good point.
worship him?"
Yeah.
So sometimes children ask the most powerful questions, in their
Yeah.
innocence. That was when I kind of felt the same way. Okay, why does everybody need to worship one God who revealed himself only to Jewish people or Arabic people? So, if he's a God of the entire universe, won't he send prophets to every country? Won't
Yeah.
he send revelations to every country?
Yeah.
So, why can't the Christians accept, let's say, Vishnu as the version of their God for the Indian people? So that's what I kind of thought, because the Greeks who identified their gods with Levantine gods or Roman gods, wherever they went. So why can't the Christians do that? So that was when I started probing deeply, and I happened to discover this process of conversion. So it's not a Christians say that they saw the light and then they converted. That's what they say. Right from Paul. He saw the light
You're
on
right.
the road to Damascus and then he converted. No, that is not. That's not the true for most of the people, at least after the 4th century. So I kind of realized, if uh, this converting from one worldview to another worldview is very tough, at least for me.
Yeah.
Imagine you lived your entire life believing something and held it dear to your life, and then you suddenly have to shift it to some other foreign worldview.
Yeah.
So, how turbulent would that process would have been for many people who converted? So that was what inspired me to write this book, because most other books treat it as a very statistical phenomenon. Okay, like people preferred pizzas, suddenly they shifted to burgers. No, it's not like that. So it's a very emotional process. That impacted a lot and continues to impact a lot. So that was the reason I kind of felt that maybe my voice, I should also be telling my own version of what happened. That is very relatable to me.
Sure. So, it's interesting because like you went on this journey, to eventually write this book, but your background is mathematics and you studied that in your college and PhD. When did you start learning the languages? Because a good part of your writing this book is also stemming from your love of the languages, of learning it, and so on.
My love for languages started pretty late. So in my PhD days, I came across a very nice Sanskrit teacher from my campus, uh, from an organization called Samskrita Bharati. I don't know if you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah,
They conduct free spoken Sanskrit camps across India. Even in the US, they have some branches.
they
You
do.
can check
Yeah.
it out. So I got captivated by that. So initially, I went on just for to see how it is, but that kind of hooked me in, and I picked up Sanskrit. And COVID also happened. I had a lot of time, so I did a lot of online reading, online courses, and then I continued from then on. And then I picked up, if you look at language, it is also ultimately like mathematics only. It's like discovering patterns and
Right.
exceptions, and putting everything that you learn together in a structured way. So we don't realize it, but that's how a language grammar also is.
Right.
So and that was how I got into all this. So and then I kind of learned the biblical languages to engage with the text more deeply.
Right.
Uh, so that because many things are becoming more transparent if we know the etymology of the word correctly, and if we are able to appreciate the nuances behind the words.
Right.
So that was when I decided to properly appreciate the text. And that's how I got into this.
So, which languages did you end up learning?
So I ended up learning biblical Greek, Latin, and biblical Hebrew for for this. So and then I kind of know enough to get through the text that I target.
Okay.
So I don't focus on speaking the language, so that kind of removes a major part of the load.
Right.
I just need to read and translate them. So that is not actually that difficult, if you ask, in my opinion. So that's a very doable task. Take the target vocabulary and then study the grammar and then work on it with a specific process. You will finish it. So that was how I did it.
Very interesting. Hey, Itya, how are you?
Hey, hi Rama, Mohan again.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, good, good.
So
Glad
I
you
have
could
one
join us.
follow-up question. Like when you were learning biblical Greek or a classical Greek, were you using any of the Gen AI tools, or was it before everything?
No, I was learning it after COVID times. I didn't use any Gen AI tools and all. I was using just books and Udemy courses
Oh,
like that.
now do you like now the tools are so accessible? Would it have made your learning much easier?
Of course, yeah. Now it's becoming much easier with generative AI. Yeah, I kind of wish I had these kind of tools when I learned it, but I don't exactly regret it that much.
So I'm another question, Rama. Just a follow up from your last question. Like the process of conversion from one worldview to another worldview, I've seen that once the person gets converted, he's a he grows an extreme contempt for his previous worldview. For example, when he converted into some Christianity, he kind of abuses his old gods. uh, what's the psyche behind this, especially with
Yeah,
respect to Indian Christians
that's what I
or any
explained in
monotheistic
the
religion?
book. Yeah, that's what I explained in the book as well. It's not just Indian Christians. See, the thing is, when a person converts, he leaves behind millennia old inherited traditions and wisdom, right?
Yeah,
So that leaves a huge vacuum and must sting a lot.
yeah,
So you need some very strong excuse or reason to justify a conversion, correct? To adopt a foreign viewpoint, foreign religion. So you have to portray your native religion in as bad light as possible, so that you don't feel that much insecure about converting into the new faith. So that's a natural tendency, if you ask me. So, in fact, early Christians were as uh, confrontational about their faith as they accuse Muslims to be now. So it's not so that kind of phenomenon also happens because Christianity is an exclusive faith.
yeah,
So you should it does not entertain you being tempted to your old ways. It's okay. You cannot just convert to Christianity and also walk into the temple of Jupiter or the temple of Vishnu, just for old sake, for reliving old memories from your old life. No, you can't do that. So if it is that much exclusive, then it makes even more imperative to to have a negative feeling for your old faith, if you have to avoid it with that much care and exclusivity. So that is what happens.
Well, do you think it was
During this
historically like
process.
this, like in the early Christian period where, first started growing, after the death of Christ and so on? It seems like there was quite a bit of diversity of different beliefs in the early time period of Jesus's after his death. Now, from my reading of quite a few of the Gospels, the Gnostic Gospels that come out, and then the scholars that are writing in that time period, there was yes, there was some level of the exclusivism in some aspects of certain sects of Christianity, but it wasn't all Christianity wasn't like that at that time. Correct?
So Christianity was very diverse prior to the Constantinian, unification and imperialization of the religion, I accept. And yeah, of course, not all Christians would have been confrontational about their faith. But what ultimately matters is that, the voices of those who were had a very more inclusive approach did not matter at the end. It's
Right.
only the voices that who were very vocal and vehement about their opposition to the old ways. It was they who had all the power and eventually won out. So that is what happened as well. And despite the fact that the Christian sects would have fought with other Christian sects, most of them were clear that the old ways were wrong. The paganism was something that is to be stayed away from. They were very strong in that. So that's what I get. That's what I say. I think about the diversity in the early Christian church. Yeah, there was lots of diversity, but there was also a clear understanding that there was a clear understanding that who is a heretic and who is a pagan. So
Right.
So that was a very sharp differentiation.
So I think on this point we can shift a little bit because I want to get into the book itself, right? When did you start writing this book, and who was the audience you're trying to write for?
This book started off as a blog for some of my friends who were interested in the topic.
Yeah.
Then after I joined Twitter, I kind of compiled it and sent it to people who had connections with publishers, and that's how. And then I cleaned up into a proper book-like format. So that was how it started.
And who was your audience primarily?
Indians, fellow Hindus who have absolutely no clue about Western civilization.
And that's interesting. Like how I mean, given the fact that India, speaks. I mean, not everyone speaks English, but it's was an English colony. English was part of the structure of what modern India is. Even the parliamentary system, some of the quote unquote values are Western. Why do you think it is Indians know nothing about, or not all Indians, but some Indians know nothing about Western ideas, Western religions, thoughts? Even Christianity's been there for forever. Islam has been there for a long time, right? So it's
The first thing is that people in the West, even though they are not religious, they grow up about hearing stories from the Bible, stories about Alexander, stories about the Roman emperors, and stories about Vikings and all. So their characters are familiar to a large portion of them. But Indians, they don't typically get exposed to these stories. They kind of read up only when they are adults and if they have any interest. So, and most of our school syllabus also, when they come to dealing with history of Western civilization, they start from the modern era. They start from the French Revolution. Around that period. So they focus only on modern history of Europe. They don't focus on the ancient and medieval European societies, and so that's why most Indians have no clue about all these events that I'm talking about here.
I'll put it this way: I think most Americans have no clue about those events you're talking about either.
I don't know about America. You are the expert on that.
No, I'm just saying it's like I think that sometimes people think somehow the Western education gives them some or any knowledge about their own histories, their own philosophies and ideas. Like you ask any third person in America, who is Plato, Aristotle, they don't know. Or if you ask them, who is let's use the Bible context, who is
Noah.
They'll know Noah because there's in the books. Like who's Daniel or who's in the book of Daniel? No idea. Or ask them, or Herod. Who's Herod? Most people don't know who Herod is, or whatnot. So it's interesting because it's like I do think Indians have a better knowledge of their own religion. I mean, their own history sometimes than I think Americans have of the Western history. I mean, except for maybe it's truncated by time period. Americans know like the American Revolution onwards really well. Relatively well, right? But they don't know anything before that. It's as if the world really didn't exist much until America.
Okay.
American country came into being, right? But I think in India, because of its vast history, there's a lot to pack in, number one. And like, to learn about the West when you first don't learn about yourself is difficult.
Yeah.
So I think the book is helpful in that. It does present a very, when I read it, I'm 50% through. It's given this arc that I think is very appealing to the Indian reader, even as an American reader. I can see the value in the way you write, because it does seem like what you've done quite a bit is you've done a summation of the scholarly position on a lot of these ideas, right? Like when you talk about, for example, people don't know there was a Northern Kingdom, Southern Kingdom, the 10 tribes of the North versus the 2 tribes of the South, and how the United Kingdom of Israel. Like there's just that is helpful information to understand, like historically what happened. What branch of Yahwism took over? Was it Yahwism that took over, or Elism? And then how do they approach it, right? Like temple worship versus worshiping other deities. So it doesn't appear as clean cut as a lot of people want to think it is. It's a complex morass.
That is a vast subject. What I have done is just present enough information to appreciate the theme, of the overall process of conversion. So what is relevant?
Mohan, do you have any questions to follow up what I just asked?
No. I have different questions. I can go later, but yeah, let's continue what you're talking.
So I'll just take this thread along. Okay. So you started writing this book. You focused on you started with with Judaism, Christianity, and then get into Islam. What do you think when the early Jews? Did you see them being more akin to other Bronze Age civilizations in terms of their openness or their inclusivity of other deities and other worldviews? Or what was your thoughts on that?
Towards the earlier times, Jews did slip into idolatry. You can see that in the Bible itself.
Right.
So you look at the book of Judges, for example. The entire book is people of Israel slip into idolatry. So God punishes them by delivering them into the hands of an enemy nation, and then they repent, and God sends a prophet or a judge or and finally a king to rescue his people. And then the things become good, and then eventually they slip back into idolatry. The loop repeats. So, and you also see, I also read about this. There was a discovery of some Jewish settlement in Egypt in Elephantine.
Yeah, Elephantine. Yeah.
So there the Jews were worshipping a consort to Yahweh, a feminine consort to Yahweh.
Asherah.
Yeah. So there have been lots of experiments with other kinds of deities, worshipping other kinds of deities. But eventually, by the time the prophets took over, it had solidified into monotheism a lot.
But it's interesting though, because even in the book of Maccabees, when you get to closer to 0 BC, you see the Jews themselves warring amongst themselves about the Hellenization of a part of their people.
So the thing is, as far as philosophy was concerned, Jews were very receptive towards Hellenization, because the Greek philosophy was very much sophisticated and developed. Whereas religion-wise, theological-wise, Judaism was much more rigid and was much more developed than the Greek religious traditions. So Hellenization happened in philosophy a lot, but it did not happen as much in the realm of religion. So you do hear about experimenting with Greek culture, but it did not percolate into the level of including other deities.
What's interesting, I did a couple podcasts with Myth Vision and Gnostic Informant, and they talked to scholars that really study Elephantine, right? Like for example, like one of the many of these scholars are presenting the view, like elephantine. What you end up finding is the earliest sources of Jewish writing don't have any reference to Moses or any of these figures. In fact, these might be literary creations that developed in the period of elephantine and after. And it's very interesting. But the point I want to drive here is, okay, so when you're talking about the cycles of the Jewish people going towards monotheism, falling away, coming back, going back, would you say that Christianity at some form is a kind of a sect of Judaism falling into polytheism?
I don't get, why would you say Christianity is a sect of Judaism? You mean with the Trinity and all such things? Do you think in that point of view?
Well, I'm saying because Jesus was a Jew, Paul was a Jew, then you have this entire Jewish thought that comes into play that eventually comes up with the idea of the Trinity, which is, I think, in some way a form of a polytheistic sense.
The Trinity, and even the cross is actually kind of symbol, kind of something, right? And even Catholicism is much more polytheistic in appearance. You have the veneration of saints, you have the veneration of the Virgin Mary.
Right.
So you get into all sorts of pagan-like, if I may, but if you ask Catholics, they will say they are not worshipping, they are venerating. They don't pray to Mary, they ask Mary to pray for them. So that's what they say, right?
Right. It's the intercession, right? This idea of Mary intercede on our behalf, or saints intercede on our behalf. Which begs the question is, why can't you just ask God himself? But I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. Okay, so going back to the Jewish thought here. So what do you see as a thorough line in your analysis from the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims that really demarcates them historically from, let's say, the Hindu and the Indian world?
Okay, you want a comparative analysis between the Abrahamic faiths and the...
Kind of, if you can.
Okay, the first thing about many people say, monotheism versus polytheism, but it is not just a question of number, one God versus many gods. It's also about the kind of God that they worship. So the God that the Abrahamics worship is not a God of any natural force. It's not a God of any aspect of human nature, like the God of love or the God of war, not like that. Right. It's not also a God of, some abstract principle. And it is a God of history. That is the most important point. It's a God who reveals himself in history. So he kind of controls history. So that was what sharply demarcates. So it is the technical term for this is Deuteronomic history. Mm-hmm. So then the history of the people is determined solely based on whether the people are faithful to the covenant or not.
Right.
So that if you look at the entire section from Joshua to Kings, it's a demo of that Deuteronomic history. The book wants to tell you that the Israelites prosper when they worship God, they suffer when they don't worship God. So that's the kind of thing. So the first thing when we say God is God of what? So this is a God of history. And the next thing is that this God is actually transcendental. He sits in a distant heaven. So unlike Zeus or Poseidon, who are in nature. In fact, if you look at the ancient Greeks, for instance, there is no separate word that for let's say the sky and the God of the sky. Oranos means both the sky as well as the God of the sky. Agni means fire and the God of fire. So you kind of see that the gods are very intimate with the natural world, to the creation,
Right.
whereas the Hebraic God is not the creation. The Hebraic God is not present in creation. So I remember Zakir Naik's speech. You know him, right?
Yeah.
So he actually sums it up very brilliantly. He says the difference between Hinduism and Islam is, in Hinduism, everything is gods, G-O-D-S. Whereas in Islam, everything is gods, G-O-D apostrophe S. So I think that is a brilliant summary of what demarcates. So the creation is ontologically dependent on God, but separate from God. So there is nothing divine about nature. So, and also, if you look at the pagan gods, they don't control too much, you know. Of course, if you don't sacrifice to Poseidon, he might send an earthquake or something, but that's it. You know, it's, but if you look at the Hebraic God, he kind of interferes with every aspect of your life. He is
Right.
more controlling. So it's a very intimate God. So the gap between God and the human is very distant as far as the physical separation is concerned. But as far as the controlling nature is concerned, or the influence is concerned, the Hebraic God is more controlling and more, demanding of the lives of the devotee compared to the pagan gods. So that is those are the differentiations between that I feel between the Abrahamic and the non-Abrahamic faiths. And the other thing is, I have to single out Judaism in this aspect. For Jews and pagans, religion is a part of their ethnic identity.
Right.
So worshipping, Shiva is not an ethnic marker for Indian Hindus.
Right.
So same way, worshipping Zeus would not make any pagan in, let's say, Corinth feel a connection towards any pagan, let's say, in Rome. So that is in Judaism, the worship of the God of Israel is indeed a identity marker, but it's still an
Sure.
ethnic identity marker.
Yeah.
Whereas in case of Christianity and Islam, the religious identity is distinct from the other national and ethnic or linguistic identities. So religion is not something, you are not a Christian because you are born into a certain area, or you are a Christian because you choose to believe in this Jesus and all the Bible. So that is another thing, religion that is kind of evangelical, open to all, versus a religion that is civilizationally rooted. It doesn't bother to expand much beyond the area of civilization it originated in. So
Right. Like the Jews don't desire to make everyone Jewish.
exactly,
They just want their, but
they kind of made some of their enemies Jewish, but
yeah.
there's no systematic urge to convert the whole world into their religion. So
Right.
that's what I mean by this concept.
Yeah, and because the religions, Christianity, the religion, and Islam, religion is unmoored from ethnic identity and tribe, right? So even though someone born to a Christian or Muslim becomes Muslim or Christian, it's not rooted in their identity connected to their tribe. Like if you're born a Jew, you're both ethnically a Jew and religiously a Jew. And I think with Hinduism, I feel like is weird in between place, where it is somewhat ethnically oriented, but because it's expanded naturally beyond its ethnic borders, it's become more universalized in that sense, like Southeast Asia.
Nowadays it is okay. So I am not saying Hinduism or other pagan religions never expanded. Even Hellenism expanded beyond its place of origin.
Right.
But when it expanded, they kind of expanded their civilizational identity as well. They brought the new peoples into their fold in terms of civilization as well, not just religion. It's not like, okay, just change your religion, but you're still different from us. It's not like that.
Right.
So it was not a conversion as such. It was a extension of a family, you can say. So
Okay.
Whereas here it's like, okay, we are not the same people, but just convert to our faith because this is a true God. So that's what is. And if you go to Indonesia, for example, one of my friends was in Bali. He was telling me that they show to you that this is Brahma, this is Vishnu, this is Shiva, but it won't look like the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva in India. So it looked nothing like that. So what essentially happened was they had their local deities. Still, they call them by their local names as well. Just in the larger realm, they identified their deities with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and they also transferred and included absorbed the larger stories of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva into their deities stories. So this was actually kind of like a inclusive expansion of the Indosphere or Hellenosphere, rather than a conversion as such, if you get what I mean.
No, absolutely. Mohan, do you have any follow-up?
No, I mean, I just, even the village deities are always mapped to larger pantheon. Like in my village, they used to call her Durga, although she was probably a local deity. So I see the similarities over there.
So, for example, when the Greeks conquered the Levant, the Levantines were worshipping Baal. They still continue to worship Baal. The Greeks simply call them Zeus and thought they were worshipping Zeus. That's it.
Right.
And their temple, was there. They maintained the temple. They just built a very nice architectural, walls surrounding the altar. So they kind of made it a sophisticated, in terms of architecture. So it is kind of like a expansion rather than evangelization, if I may put it.
Yeah. It's like syncretism.
Well, I mean, even at some level, when I don't know if you had the chance to do this, study like the ancient Mesopotamian texts of the Epic of Gilgamesh and Story of Utnapishtim and the what's it called, the Anunnaki text, right? Like you're clearly seeing the Jews, or I mean at that time the Semitic people, taking those stories and ideas and then retelling them in their own tradition, right? Like the story of Noah is nothing but Utnapishtim.
Even if you look at the Genesis story, the story kind of resembles the Mesopotamian Enuma Elish in many ways. For example, in the beginning, the earth was formless and void, So Tahom, that is the Hebrew word that is used to describe the deep waters that were present when God began to create. And that looks a lot like Tiamat in the Enuma Elish, Apsu and Tiamat. Tiamat is the goddess of the waters, and Apsu, they kind of Marduk, you kind of see Marduk defeats Tiamat, right? Marduk is actually a wind god. So if you look at the Hebrew Bible, the spirit of God hovered over the face of the deep.
Right.
Yeah, so the word for deep is Tehom, which sounds like Tiamat. And the Ruach Elohim, Christians translate as spirit of God, but it actually means the wind of God.
Yeah.
So you see the same kind of wind hovering over the waters. And you also see such borrowings from the Mesopotamian elements. So, of course, the Israelites did not emerge in a vacuum. They were exposed to many high cultures in Egypt and Mesopotamia. So, of course, they would have been influenced by these stories as well. So, it's not exactly appropriation or stealing, I would say.
No, I don't think
people tend to dramatize it, but it's a natural process of, evolution.
And just on a note, the word Apsu also occurs in Rig Veda, and it's also connected to Apam Nap, which is water. There must be some. I mean, I think people have argued.
So I kind of also feel Marduk sounds similar to Marut, wind,
Yeah.
Maruti. But I don't. These are just speculative. We can't rely on just few words and their cognates. So.
Well, I mean, I think linguists do talk about maybe there's some level of words coming interactions between the Mesopotamians and the Rig Vedic people, because you do find some terms again like Appa that might be connected to the word Apsu, and might be, there must be some sort of connection. It's somewhat the linguists, what I've been reading, have been talking about. No, not just
I tend to not be too much dogmatic about either this or that position, because ultimately there is no way to solidly test all these things. Okay, so I do not focus on much on these things.
That's a researcher or a scientist in you speaking.
Yeah, I mean, if there is solid evidence, I kind of believe it, but I don't like to develop some belief just for the sake of it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. So go ahead, Mon.
So, Rama, what was the most interesting topic while writing? You felt, oh, this will be so enriching for the readers of your target audience. What was the most interesting topic for you?
I would say the most interesting topic was when I write about the Apostle Paul. So, as much as I don't like his theology, he's a genius. Okay, so he's a so imagine traveling all the way over the Roman Empire and establishing missions and converting people. It's not an easy task. Especially in the ancient world. So I kind of got fascinated by the Pauline theology, especially in its Romans. I think everybody should read Romans at least once in their lifetime.
Right.
So there you can see how Paul builds up a theology to convert a diverse set of people who had absolutely nothing in common with each other, as well as the Judean culture from which Christianity sprung from. So what Paul argues is that converting to Christianity is not exactly a disruption. It is actually a restoration. He kind of converts a revolution into a restoration.
Right.
So what Paul says is basically, so we all ask, right? If God is the God of the entire universe, why did he not reveal himself to every nation? Why did he reveal himself only to the Jews? So Paul answers it by saying that there was a time when everybody knew about the God of Israel. But eventually they forgot and they slipped into their idolatry.
What he calls the unknown God. The unknown God.
That is a little bit tangential topic. I'll come to it. But what Paul essentially argues is that the entire world was Christian once in some technical sense. Like Muslims say the entire world was Muslim, once, or Moses was a Muslim. The Arabs were Muslim once. Okay. Actually, this theology is from Paul. Paul says that everybody, no matter what nation they were born into, they all knew the God of Israel once. But eventually, Paul kind of puts it, they exchanged the worship of the true God by, the worship of demons to the, So, and then they forgot about the God. So apparently, Christianity is a opportunity that God has given to these lost souls to restore their primeval universal monotheism that was prevalent across the entire human race. So that kind of process, converting or masking a revolution into a restoration of some lost past, it's actually echoed through several different ideologies if you look at. So regarding your point that Mukunda mentioned to the unknown God, so apparently in the Greco-Roman world, the idea was that, there are gods everywhere. There are lots of gods for lots of people and at lots of places. What we know is just a fraction of them. We may, that we worship based on who we are exposed to and what we inherit from our ancestors. So in the Roman sacrifice, there was always a sacrifice addressed to the unknown gods at the end, because okay, I have prayed to all the known gods. So despite that, there may be some gods who are not known. So let me also pray, offer a prayer or sacrifice to those unknown gods. So that was what Paul kind of picks up on. He kind of says that the unknown God that you have been sacrificing to is the one who created the entire universe, and who is the God worshipped by the Israelites. So that is another trick he uses to kind of make Christianity more palatable for the pagans. So it kind of echoes itself even in modern ideologies. For example, Karl Marx, he kind of says the entire human race was communist. When they were hunter gatherers. When the humans were hunter gatherers, they were in a primitive communist utopia, and then came agriculture and private property. That kind of ruined everything, created class distinctions. So communism is not exactly a revolution; it's actually a restoration of that primeval communism that was present in the older stage of human history for a modern age. So if you look at Muhammad again, he says that he destroyed the Kaaba because he says that the Arabs were actually Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael, who were worshipping Allah, and then eventually they got tempted by idols. So the idolatry part that they inherited from all their ancestors for millennia, it's not actually a legitimate inheritance. It's actually a corruption that they had underwent from their primeval worship of Allah. So when Muhammad destroys the idols in Kaaba, he says he's a restorer, not a destroyer. If you look at Martin Luther again, he says for him the Reformation is not a revolution, despite its impact that it had, but it's the restoration of the primeval Christianity that was present during the apostolic age, which got corrupted by the overreach of the Catholic Church. So you can see that echoing across so many different modern ideologies. Even if you look at let's say Dravidianism, for instance, they say that they talk about Aryan corruption of their native Tamil faith, even though we have absolutely no memory of what their supposedly native Dravidian religion is.
Right.
They say that Dravidian faith had nothing to do with so-called Aryan Brahminical faith, and that was actually a later corruption. So in their image, Periyar is not a destroyer of for Tamil culture and religion. He is a restorer. He is restoring the Tamils into the former glory.
Yeah,
You
Kumari
can,
Kandam and whatnot.
yeah, you can see all these sorts of things. You won't have there won't be any memory of their so-called pure past, but they say that is indeed the case. And what you inherited traditionally is not actually a legitimate inheritance. It's actually a corruption of what was there before, which I have now forgotten, which I am now reminding you again. So,
But how did they know? How does Muhammad know what the? I mean, I know how Muhammad says he knows. He hears it from the angel, Jibril, who gives it to him, right? And then, but the funny thing is, like, the stories in the Quran are so different than the stories in the Old Testament and even the New Testament. And then so they actually coincide more with some of the apocrypha than they do with the extent text. So it's interesting.
actually, what is hypothesized is that the aberrations of the biblical stories in the Quran are actually because the Arabs were exposed to a heretical version of Christianity,
Right.
that was kicked out of the Byzantine Empire. So that's the reason you see these kind of phenomena. But nevertheless, you can see the same ideology playing out, Christians laugh at Muslims when Muslims say that Moses was a Muslim. But
Right.
Christians say the same thing, okay? They call Plato as a Christian without Christ or something, kind of
Right.
do all sorts of things,
I mean, you kind of have to, because if you're taking ideas from someone this smart like Plato or Aristotle, like you want to borrow their ideas without having them be the antithesis of what you are.
Have you heard of the harrowing of hell doctrine?
Which one is this one?
Harrowing of hell. In Catholic and Orthodox churches, there is a belief that when Jesus was died on the cross, that 3 days gap was there, right, till he rose.
Right.
So at that time, it is believed that he went into Hades.
Yes. He freed all souls. Yes.
Yeah, and then he kind of he kind of gave salvation to all those virtuous pagans who lived before him.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, but because the idea was they did not know of him before. Now, anyone, so at that time afterwards, the church said, but if you hear of him now, because he's come, and you deny him, then you don't get salvation then. It's all, this is only for people that didn't know of him.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was always wondering, like 2000 years, I mean, Christians believe before Christ was very little time, right? Not hundreds of thousands of years. Always wondered what would happen to them who didn't knew about Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, they have a doctrine around that.
Nice.
It's very interesting. I mean, you have to kind of, I mean, a lot of the Christian, theological hermeneutics is reading Jesus back into the Old Testament, like in these
typology.
Yeah. And Muslims do something similar too, reading Allah back into the Old Testament, New Testament.
If you listen to Zakir Naik, it does this a lot. He takes a random Bible verse, Jesus saying, and then says it predicts Muhammad. He takes a random verse from the Puranas and says Kalki Avatar is Prophet Muhammad. So
he had a free ride, man. Like early YouTube, he had such an influence on a lot of young people, young Hindus. Like no one defended his one-way debates. I think mostly he used to play around, like it was all pre-planned.
Oh yeah.
I
think he did something with Sri Ravi Shankar. And sometimes the problem is, like, I think the Hindu gurus can be, they're trying to build bridges.
They can be naive.
And then you have, the Zakir Naiks don't care about the bridge; they care about the win. And so it's I guess this is what people mean by Kshatrubodh, or Shatrubodh. But I get that point. I understand it, but I feel like people try to have Shatrubodh without having the knowledge of what your tradition says anyway. And then the problem with that tends to be, in my view, you kind of lose the soul of what the Hindu thought is when you're so focused on the enemy constantly, as if they're the eternal enemy. I don't even think they're an enemy. I think they're just like ignorant ideas and thoughts. So you don't fight ignorance with with violence. You fight it with knowledge. But that's a whole other topic here. So of the three religions that you studied, where do your first is where does your preference lie, and where does your preference not lie? Like in those three religions, where do you find yourself? Oh, if I connect with this a bit more and I like these ideas, and where do you say I don't like these ideas?
Okay, I don't have an issue per se in somebody worshipping victim of crucifixion as the god.
Yeah.
So I find absolutely no problem with that. I also don't find a problem with a God who forgives sinners, who asks you to love your neighbor.
Right.
And I find the religious Christianity, Islam, Judaism, I don't find their theological positions problematic for those who are inside the faith.
Yeah.
So the only problem lies in how they treat the people outside their jurisdiction. Apart from that, I absolutely have no issues with these the kind of theology they follow and the kind of exclusivism as well. I don't find it
Yeah.
problematic, because even Hindu sects, some of them are exclusivistic. If you take Vaishnavites, they won't go to Shiva temples. They don't accept prasad from Shiva temples. But they don't. They are not in a mission to convert the whole world. So that, and they still embed themselves into the Hindu matrix. They don't say Shiva is a demon exactly. They just say Shiva is Dasa, Bhagava, Supreme Bhagavata of Vishnu. So you don't need to worship Shiva once you have accepted Vishnu. And also, only when you have done that Samashrayana ceremony, all this exclusivity comes in. So for the average lay person, he is still very syncretic and eclectic in its religious approach. So
Like
the exclusivity part per se also doesn't bother me. It's the combination of exclusivism and evangelism for the entire world. So, okay, so my issue is this. People talk about biodiversity, people talk about linguistic diversity, people talk about cultural diversity, how we should absolutely conserve each of them,
Yeah.
But when it comes to religion, I think that there is kind of like a free ride, Okay, people might say, you don't have people saying, this language deserves to die because it cannot survive, or this species deserves to go extinct because it cannot survive. We are still people defending that, right? But when it comes to religion, apparently we are tempted to believe that they should be competing and let the fittest ones survive. No, I don't believe in that. I believe that every religion has something unique to offer for its people and convey, and it's a storehouse of inherited wisdom, and hence they deserve to survive. And they deserve to be protected. They deserve to be protected in their own places of origin. So that is what I feel about this. That's the only part of Christianity and Islam that worries me the most. Apart from that, to the insiders, I find Christianity as a very fulfilling faith. They may tell you that they are able to experience the sacred, so that part I'm not judgmental about. The only way it affects me is how they treat the outsider and how they could become more inclusive, at least now.
That's a very inclusive way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would generally agree with you on that view. For like, I don't care what people believe internally. I don't care how they practice. Do your thing, find your spiritual truth or path, and walk it. Obviously the problem is how you treat others and what you think about others in some sense, because that influences the way you treat and behave others. I mean, theologically, when I sit when I put myself into the shoes of these traditions, I still have problems. I still have problems with this. I mean, the necessary position of like all-knowing, all-powerful, all that stuff, and then still having evil somehow come in the world and trying to explain it away through this idea of free will.
I get that, but I view that as a kind of like a mathematical problem, kind of. People can argue about it, but the problem that I have with their exclusive aspect is something much more deeper. It's about it's an emotionally invested. I'm much more emotionally invested on that, and I don't. In fact, I mean, I do have positions on theological aspects as well, but I don't find them contemptible.
Yes.
So I might argue, but I don't judge people or have a contemptuous feeling for them because they do that. Or because
Well, I
they
mean,
believe in them.
I think this is where part of it's like the area where they mesh, right? Because some of the theology is about other people, where those other people go, and the hell and this and that, right? That to me is contemptible, right? It
Yeah.
like somehow like, the
Those
idea.
aspects of theology that translate into hatred of the out group. Yeah,
Yes.
that is what.
Yeah, and
And
that's
I
where
also
go
I
ahead.
also think that in that aspect, I find the Catholic and the Orthodox churches much more
Correct.
hopeful for change,
Yes.
because for them it is not just the book,
Yeah.
For them the church is a living entity,
Yeah.
and they can change their theology if the community decides. For example, when the Pope recently said, when Pope Francis, the
Yeah.
former Pope Francis, said all religions lead to God, I was genuinely happy when he said that.
Yeah.
Because I feel that, in their church, revelation is not a one-time thing. It's kind of like Jesus kind of the Holy Spirit still directs the church
church. Yeah.
through the vicar of Christ. For example, the Pope holds the vicar of Christ. So if the Pope
Yeah.
decides to be inclusive, there is still hope for the community to become inclusive.
Correct.
So
Correct.
in that sense, I find if they change at least now their theological positions, I would welcome it. I won't
Oh yeah.
judge. Yeah.
Just a
Yeah,
follow-up, Rama. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, everyone.
Oh, just a follow-up, Rama. Was Catholic and Orthodox Church always like that since the medieval times, or they're just evolving
No, not at all.
in modern
Only
times?
after the Vatican II, things went like that, in that direction. Before that, they were as brutal as and as fundamentalist as the Protestant churches we see today. In fact, it was Catholics who did the Goan Inquisition, right? Why
Yeah.
do you think
Yeah.
they would be any better than Protestants?
Yeah. Yeah. So why do you think they're changing from that orthodoxy to, no, can I call it orthodoxy? Yeah, sure.
I don't know exactly why, but I think the time has come, right? Christianity is dying in the West, so it can't go if it still literally believes the world was created in 7 days.
Yeah.
So that's why I think they are becoming more inclusive to other knowledge systems like science and other doctrines, like mutual engagement with other faiths and those aspects.
But
Yes.
Protestants aren't yet. The Protestants are not.
What? Yeah,
The
yeah.
Protestant.
And
It's
also,
funny.
I think when we say Protestant, we should distinguish. Like
Yeah.
there are nowadays Protestant is used to just mean somebody who's not Catholic, right? So
Or
there
Orthodox.
are,
Yeah.
yeah. So there are some denominations.
Episcopalians are fine. Yeah.
There are some denominations
Anglicans.
where they are Protestant for namesake because they don't want to listen to the Pope, but they are
Yeah.
actually pretty Catholic. The Anglican Church, for example.
Right. The Episcopalians.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a few of those. Yeah. That you're right. But
what I have contempt for is those American Protestants in your country, evangelicals.
Yeah.
Especially
I have contempt for them too. They're just the way I say it is like, that type of Christianity is the dumbest type of Christianity around. It's like this, you're arguing for a dictator in the spiritual dictator who you think hates his own creation, except if you love him. It is a really, really like terrible way to think about God and the way you treat others in that context, right? Like your hellfire, brimstone, like either my way or the highway kind of mentality. That Christianity is where, like, I tell people, like, if you're going to be Christian, be like Orthodox or Catholic or Anglican or something like that, because it's like you have a much more bigger toolbox to go to than like the pastors that you find in evangelical churches.
Yeah. And also there are some churches which are very nationalist, Anglican, Ethiopian, Coptic and all.
Yeah.
Their Christianity has integrated with their national identity so much that they find it meaningless to expand it beyond their nation.
Yeah, that's right.
If you look at Irish Catholicism, for example, they have their own patron saints and festivals. They kind of find it pointless to evangelize their version of Christianity to non-Irish people, let alone non-Christians.
Like Coptics
So,
do the same thing, right? Coptic
yeah,
Christians are just leave us alone. Let us do our thing. You guys do your
yeah,
thing. We're
yeah,
happy, right? And that's where, like, I think with the Islam element, I very much more in favor of like the Ismailis that I find in their philosophy and the 12er Shiaism or something like that than I do with general Sunnis and like their particular branches, because again, like at least the Ismailism that I find with people like Khalil Andani and then the Aga Khan and things like that tend to be much more inclusive, whereas the other ones are very much not so.
yeah.
So one thing I found it very fascinating, your recent tweet, Rama, that East is going to be the bastion of Christianity. Is Americans spending billions of dollars in India, especially Baptist evangelical churches? Is that because they're losing ground in the West?
Yeah.
Christianity's center of gravity has always shifted in history. So it was the Eastern Mediterranean. It started off in Judea and then expanded to Eastern Mediterranean and then to the Mediterranean. And then it shifted Western. When they lost the North Africa and the Levant, they moved west. And then now it is moving south and east again. So it has always shifted in orientation. So this is not something new.
Yeah.
People are excited that Christianity is dying in Europe. No, but they are more than compensating by growing here.
Yeah.
So
Right.
So that's what. This should not be surprising if you look at the wider history of the church.
Yeah.
So why do you think in India there is growth in Christianity happening when there's such a bountiful and beautiful spiritual and religious system in India? Why do you think that grows there?
I'm not an expert in sociology and all, but I think everybody has some spiritual needs.
Right.
Okay. So like everybody has physical needs and mental needs, they have some spiritual needs. If they don't get that fulfilled from the religion they are born into, and if they find that some other religion they're exposed to offers that, they convert. That's what I feel. Many people say oppression, suppression, depression and all, but I beg to differ slightly on that. I have seen many oppressed people, many people in utter poverty still clinging on to their religion.
Yeah.
And believing that their God will do something for them eventually. So I don't think it's a question of the material condition or the mental condition, but about the spiritual resilience. So if since Hinduism and pretty much all paganism has always been communal, so it was always nurtured through the system of family and extended family and clan and kinship, like that.
Right.
So that's how these pagan religions expand. So they kind of satisfy the spiritual needs. But I think, when you kind of lose that touch with your family, kin, and so that, you don't find the religion inherited from them to be satisfying your spiritual needs, you kind of jump the ship into another community which is tightly knit and offers you weekly meetings and prayers and
Right.
helping each other, confessing, all these things. I tend to view it as a more personal process rather than a deterministic process of you're oppressed so you convert. No, I know
Right.
many Brahmins who have converted to Christianity, many rich Brahmins who have converted to Christianity. So Esther Dhanraj is one popular example that I read across. So
her family converted to Christianity,
yeah,
yes, and then she converted back, right? So
yeah, even I know personally there is a Brahmana Kristava Samiti in Chennai where I live. So all these mamas and mommies who are converted come together talk about Christianity in their Brahminical Tamil dialect, and there are also
Are they still wearing
churches.
the Yagnopavitam and like walking?
Yeah, I don't know that, but they are still vegetarian, and they also kind of listen to Carnatic music, of course, it's Jesus songs, and then they also have their own churches where
Yeah.
the priest conducts the ritual in Brahminical Tamil dialect. So, it has not,
So,
it's not been about oppression. It has not been about suppression. It is always about identifying vulnerable people and then proselytizing them. In fact, so I lost my father in 2018. When I walked out of campus from IIT Madras during those times, my face used to be visibly depressed.
Yeah.
People could tell me. Normally, missionaries don't approach me, but at that time, I saw many of missionaries approaching me and asking me. I
yeah,
kind
they
of
prey on
feel
insecurities.
they're trained psychologically. They are like, properly trained to identify people who are spiritually or mentally depressed or in need of some communal affection, and then they kind of exploit that and use that to convert them. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, they definitely do. Especially they target people who are moving from villages, who have their insecurities,
Yeah.
moving into big cities, or if
So
they're
if
needing for
somebody in your
community.
family is dying from
Yeah,
or is
it happened to my
has a
mom.
serious, is
Yeah,
okay.
it happened to my mom. My dad was sick, and mission like one of the tenants were missionaries, and they were like, "Yo, come, we'll pray for you. Join us for prayer." They used to invite my mom and whatnot. My mom hated it. My mom hated
The
it.
thing is, the world is now moving from a family-based support system to
Yeah,
a non-familial based support system like friends and like that, and
Yeah.
other relations built on common interests rather than lineage. So even I don't think many of us have that close bond to our cousins than our parents had with theirs. I
yeah,
think in the next generation will absolutely not have much cousins in the first place because we are having only 1 or 2 kids.
yeah.
So so when the world is moving, the world order is shifting from a familial based support system to a friendship based support system. Uh, it is imperative that Hinduism and other pagan traditions that have thrived on familial based support systems to kind of perpetuate their religion and making it fulfilling for their adherents. They should also adapt to the new format of supporting in a very communal manner apart from the familial system. So that's
Right.
where I think the gap is.
Yeah, Mukunda, I know we briefly touched upon this in our previous podcast with Sean.
Yeah.
The reason the temple as a community, uh, like that's the reason why even in India, I feel like we need temple as a community where like all people within the same neighborhood coming together and supporting each other. Although we have like more festivals and whatnot versus compared to here, I think that is a very crucial aspect. And I think atrocity literature might not be the reason for conversion, but it does help in conversion, especially in lower strata of the society. uh, they make you feel very angry that you were oppressed all these years. This is the way out. This is your something. This is your protest to come out of the oppression. Why do you want to follow that religion which oppressed you? I think that plays kind of a big role as
I'm
well.
not denying that. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, ultimately, it is a spiritual vacuum
Yeah,
that needs to be filled.
Right.
yeah,
And that, I think, yeah, of course the temple is a place for that, but I also think and again, this is something I think I discussed yesterday and maybe before too, is I think Hinduism in its modern traditional engagement hasn't done a good job. Like you have, like for example, I'm not a big fan of people like Sadhguru. I think he's he's trash. But I mean, that's just my view.
Should
People
you
can
be
hate me.
saying that in? Should you be saying that in a public record?
I'll be honest about my views, just
Okay.
because I think ultimately, like, part of the problem is we give God men or gurus this higher position and expect nothing of them other than the fact that they're in this higher position. Like, are you exploiting the world? What's the value that you're bringing to society on the whole? And my problem is, and that being said, I mean, put that aside for a second. The issue that I tend to have is the traditional world of Hindus, like Panditas and so on. How are these Panditas engaging with ideas that come from the West? Are you trying to take the ideas that we have as Hindus and have them like dialogue with, say like Plato, Aristotle, or Kant, or are you having them dialogue with modernity, the problems with modern ideas, evolution or quantum theory, or any of these things that I think the West does a really good job with, the Christianity and all these other traditions do a good job of grappling with them. Now, it's not to say we'll have different answers than the tradition itself has, but I don't see that grappling occurred. And I think part of that is sometimes I feel like the modern Hindu is left in a lurch in saying, okay, I don't know what our tradition says about this stuff, so I have to make it up. I don't know how they're talking about these ideas. And I think so. You go to people like Sadhguru, who says he hasn't read a single text or does any of these things, but just spouts nonsensical statements
About quantum mechanics and gravity.
Yes, yeah, or like Nityananda, right? The oneness capsule here, and E equals mc squared nonsense, where it's like there's this gap that people are looking for filling, and I don't think the traditional acharyas are doing
They
that
kind
well.
of think their religion is a parallel universe apart from all
Yeah,
these things that are going on, cool things that are going on in the modern world.
yeah, and I don't think historically Hinduism's been like that. Hinduism
Yeah.
has regularly dealt with its ideas and pushed ideas further and further, but somehow in the modern age, our position is, well, that Acharya in the 15th century, what he said, that's all that matters.
Even in the British period, you see Brahmins debating missionaries with
Yes.
pretty much
Yeah.
solid, foundation in both their own traditions and the Christian West. But I think you are right in pointing out that it is ironically after the independence that we have become more insular in dealing with Western thought.
And this to me is like where it's like, yes, we can be upset about colonialism or be upset about what happened with the Islamic Gate in India, but I feel like it's gotten to a point when I read people, it's just every problem is blamed on that.
Yeah.
There's no sense of like, hey, we as a community, as a people, have to take responsibility for what we can do now with this. And it's like this constant victim mentality playing out. And I have issues with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I see a lot of comments on my videos as well, Mukunda. They
Yeah.
tend to blame everything on Nehru and Congress, and like, oh, textbooks are not fixed. It's all Congress. It's all Marxist. But
Aurangzeb is also
15
a
years.
popular candidate.
Yeah, it's been almost like not 15 years, 9 years since new government came in, and you had so much of political power. No one, like, what you as an individual have done to undo it, nothing, just complaints.
But that's exactly the point. It's like, let me look over there and point the finger at somebody else when, like, what are you doing in your daily life?
Yeah.
Are you in your neighborhood? Are you getting the kids together, teaching them something? Are you going, what's being done? Like, and people can complain all day, but take actions, right?
Yeah.
Again, I think people again forget, like, Hinduism, whatever you want to call it, is not a doxa the way it is. It is karma, 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 karma. Action, 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 action. So, like, the whole point of the Gita is even not acting is acting. So choose an action. And I feel like, people think like, oh, someone else will take care of it. So, no, only person is there is you.
Yeah. So Rama, coming back to your book, I have like a couple of questions before we end this podcast.
Yeah.
One of the chapter I loved is Chhatrapati of Rome. Although Julian had a very little time, he tried to bring a lot of changes, but still he didn't satisfy either side. What went wrong with his
he died
approach?
young.
I can't exactly say what went wrong. Maybe if he had ruled for a longer time, he would have kind of reached out and successfully convinced much more people. So, but I get your point. That people, who were very, common folk people found this philosophy to, sophisticated, and philosophical people found his taste of rituals off-putting.
Yeah.
Like when he sacrificed animals, people found that very cringe, you might say, the philosophically oriented people. So yeah, I do get that. It does have some modern echoes as well. So because Julian was operating at a time when Christianity had established itself as the cool new thing that is happening in their world. So he was trying to reverse the tide and make the old gods fashionable. So what was your exact question again?
Oh, so I was just saying Julian wanted to bring back paganism
Yeah.
as cool, but somehow pagans didn't click with him as well.
Well, there was a shift happening. There was a tide, but the problem he died early, and then all his policies were undone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, in fact, I think if there are lots of debates, scholarly debates on what would have happened if Julian had ruled very properly and had a long reign. Could he have successfully reversed the tide of Christianity? There are still debates on that. But I think since he didn't rule for much long, we can just keep speculating on what he could have or would have done.
Yeah. So the banning of sacrifices in Rome had a big impact. And we see today that a lot of Indian secular state, the bureaucrats who are running temples, they want to make animal sacrifice ban. Do you see any parallels over that? And you think we should learn Hindus should learn something from what happened in Hellenic world?
Yeah, the fuel for paganism is, ritual. So rituals, festivity, sacrifices, these are the bloodline of paganism. It was something that united people together. In paganism, what united people was orthopraxy. What they believed was a matter of personal, quest or something like that. It was much more diverse. But even people who believed in quite a lot of different things, they came together to honor, their Kula Devata or a Grama Devata or their, Ishta Devata. So it was a communal, it was focused on orthopraxy. Whereas Christianity and Islam are all about orthodoxy, The thing that unites Christians is their belief, not as much as what they practice.
Right.
What they practice is kind of treated as, irrelevant or a matter of culture rather than religion.
Right.
So once this emphasis on sacrifices and rituals, it went down, then naturally paganism started to wane. So because once you remove what unites people together, they are pretty much left on their own. So it's not that they kind of silently converted. There was a lot of resistance, but you kind of feel, you're just living your last days out. So it kind of gives like that. It kind of makes you feel that, you are irrelevant now. So
yeah, I mean, there's a good book about this. Obviously, The Darkening Age by Catherine, Nixon or Nixie, I forget her last name. It's a good book. But I mean, the point you made right now actually is interesting. Because, I thought about this. Like, I remember when I was in my early 20s, so 20 some years ago, and I was like going towards the atheist. I became like agnostic atheist for a while. And I remember telling my amma and my appa that. And instead of being mad that I was an atheist, all they would say to me is, "I don't care, just do the ritual."
Exactly, exactly. My mother used to say,
Yeah.
"I don't care what you believe in, just do the arati and get over with it."
Yes, exactly, right. So this is a very different idea. Is, I think this is,
Whereas a Christian will
yeah,
say the opposite, I don't care what you do, but if you don't believe Jesus is your Lord and Savior,
right,
then you're not a Christian to
right, and I think that's where it's like, I think in the Hindu worldview, the action, the ritual, is the efficacious thing that actually does the result. What
Yeah.
you believe around it is whatever, but it's the action itself that does the result.
In fact, even many Hindu parents still say, everybody has their own time, God will, speak to the devotee
Yeah,
at their own time and they will find their way to God. It's their
yeah,
personal quest.
yeah,
What matters is whether they perform the rituals properly.
right, right. That's right. Moon, anything else?
No, I'm good.
So, Rama, do you have any, thoughts? This has been an hour and a half. It's been a good conversation. We definitely want to have you back on again, and we'll talk some more. But do you have any, thoughts that you want to end with, and then also kind of where can people get your book? Where can people find you if they want to message you and interact with you?
Okay, so for now my book is available on Indian stores. I don't know exactly when it reach US stores. So
I think you should get the
that
Kindle.
Kindle also is not yet released, I guess. I think it will
Yeah.
take some more time. So I mean, if they can reach out, if they want to reach out to me, you have my mail ID, right? Or should I type it out here? Or
I
No,
have
no,
your mail
it's
ID.
it's okay. I'll put it
Yeah.
over. I'll put text overlays during this one. I'll edit this part out. Don't worry. Your socials and whatnot.
Okay, what else do you need to know then?
Oh no, just kind of any last thoughts you have, or are you working on anything else at this time?
I'm working on a lot of things. One is I'm writing the second volume, which talks about spread of Christianity in Northern Europe. So
That's
we,
going to be interesting.
yeah, because we kind of tend to think Europe as a single united entity, but it was not the case historically. In fact, once Christianity became Roman, it kind of became, the sense that only it's a Roman thing,
Yeah.
Evangelizing to the barbarian was still very distasteful to many Christians in the Roman Empire. So the important aspect of that is, how they managed to Christianize the Germanic peoples who lived northern of the boundaries of the Roman Empire. That is what I'm working on, Germanics and Celtic peoples mainly.
Yeah.
So
Which is relatively late, right? It starts happening roughly around the 8th, 9th century, with the Vikings later going into
Germanic peoples converted late, but the Celtic people, it was quite early.
Yeah.
So so I kind of focusing on that, and then of course I'm also focusing on philosophy. The reception of pagan philosophy across the history of the church. As paganism died, Christians became more and more nostalgic and fond of pagan philosophy, and that's kind of paradoxical, but that's the case. When paganism was a living faith, their philosophy was found to be threatening. Whereas when it is dead and it's no longer posed a threat, Christians kind of developed a softer stance towards their pagan philosophical heritage. I told you, right? Harrowing of hell and those kind of doctrines they developed. To accommodate and justify the ingestion of this. And of course, it surged up a lot in the Renaissance. So even in Islam, if you look at the Iranians, their national epic is Shahnama, which is basically a epic poem about the pre-Islamic,
Rustum. Yeah.
pre-Islamic Zoroastrian heroes. So you kind of, but in India, do you see anybody, any Muslim here celebrating Hindu heroes?
You see in Indonesia though.
Yeah, because Indonesia is almost Muslim, right?
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
Yeah, so in India, it's not still the subcontinental. If the subcontinent becomes a Muslim majority, you will, of course, find a softer stance towards the
No,
pre-Islamic heritage.
yeah, I see a lot
So,
of Pakistanis celebrating Harappan, Mohenjo-daro,
yeah,
and
because they are long
Buddhist
dead.
heritage.
They are long dead. In
Yeah.
fact, some people, some Pakistanis emphasize their Buddhist heritage more than their Hindu heritage because
Yeah.
Buddhism is not a vibrant tradition in the subcontinent anymore.
Yeah.
So they kind of use Buddhist heritage as a bulwark against Hinduism, which they are
Yeah.
exposed to now.
Yeah. I mean, that is a very, I will say, very interesting point that a lot of times with Abrahamics, once they get rid of the religion or the tradition around them, they want to kind of take some of those elements back into their worldview, which like the philosophy, right? Because I think at some level, like until you, I mean, I as far as I know, and this is again as far as I know, the Jews or the pre-Christian Jews didn't really develop their own philosophical system separate and apart from the Hellenic system.
Yeah.
And the same goes for Islam, right? Like they didn't have like their own separate philosophy that they had pre-Islam and then that they accepted. No, they had to take the Greek philosophy and make it part of their worldview. And I think that is because, I mean, frankly, I mean, like the Quran doesn't have, it's not an intellectual book in the sense of it's a book of sayings. It's a book of proverbs of sorts, more so than it is a book of philosophy or intellectual thought.
It's not even a proverb, it's a collection of random law, instructions and fear mongering and
well, it's interesting because I had
and retellings of biblical stories.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Gabriel Said Reynolds, and he actually makes a really beautiful point. It's almost like a sermon. The Quran itself is it's like a sermon being told.
If you look at the language in Arabic, it's very poetical. It's an exhortative thing. It was something that was said to the Arabs at that moment, which we might find very disjointed and incoherent.
Right. Because I mean, it jumps from chapter to chapter, and within a chapter,
suddenly it jumps to another topic without any apparent connection.
No, you get this story for no connection. Like at least with the Mahabharata, at some level, every story is like woven into the narrative, right? You get like story Nala Damayanti being told in the context of Yudhishthira as being like, oh, woe is me, my life sucks, and then he's getting told these stories, right? So the narratively, like the Quran is a bit more disjointed, but this is what I'm saying is like the Bible, either the Old Testament or New Testament, or the Quran, doesn't have its own philosophy built in. It doesn't have philosophical tools, so it has to take from the pagans that built their own tools.
Yeah, if you the Bible does not talk about the Trinity. You have stories about God the Father, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. It is Trinity is a theological development that you build out of the Bible from philosophical arguments. So in that you hit the nail exactly.
Yeah. Okay, excellent, Rama. I really appreciate your time, and it's been such a good conversation. We'll put your contact information, your X profile into our show notes, and then we want to have you back on sometime again. It'll be great to talk to you some more. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mohan, too. All right, everyone. Go ahead, Mohan. You have anything to say?
No, thanks, Rama. It was a pleasure working with you, reading your works. I wish you very success for this book and the upcoming book as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you to you too. Your videos are awesome as well. So hoping to do this again in some other time on some other topic.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for watching and listening to Mirror Media. We'll catch you soon.